I think it's a fairly momentous morning. And if you've been like me watching Donald Trump trying to claim a victory or start probably one of the largest legal battles for leadership, quite an interesting morning going on at the moment. But what I wanted to talk about is where we can find opportunity and try to be slightly more optimistic about just going straight into another lockdown. And could we see opportunity where at the moment life is pretty difficult? And actually opportunity can present itself in many different forms. And even when as we're starting to change our habits and we're starting to change the way we are living, we can start to see things differently, and maybe in a way that we haven't seen it before. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen. Bear with me a second. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Thanks, Fred. And what traditionally, we have seen London being our financial centre, and it will remain as our financial centre, obviously, but the concentric rings of wealth which come out from London, and what we're going to see, and what I start to think we're going to see, is a shift in wealth. And as we start to work differently, as we start to work from home more, we're going to be in a different situation, so that we're not reliant on office space in the center of the city, and we can start to think differently about our geography and where we are. And this is changing because traditionally we had blue collar jobs, white collar jobs, and now what we're saying is we've got new collar jobs. Maybe we should call it no collar jobs, because the how we are working is changing. How we can younger people and us who are slightly older are learning more and more tech as a result of the situation, and we're designing. Maybe we're not all coding, but we are making and we are using more tech. So how we're working is completely different. And we're also becoming smart workers. And that means that we're not defined by geography. So we can work from home, we can work in a co-working space, or we can work in the City of London. So we're completely flexible, and our technology is allowing us to be flexible in how we work. And what I believe, though, is that we're not all going to want to work from home all the time, and we're going to, as we come out of this pandemic, we're going to maybe work from home 1 or 2 days a week, or we're going to want to work in a shared space or a co-working space near to where we live, and we're going to want to travel into the city maybe 1 to 2 days a week. So it completely changes the way that we're working, and that changes how we think about space. That changes the demand for space. That changes how we're going to function in the future. So that means that there's going to be less demand on space in the city, but there might be more demand for us in Kent to create space for co-workers to come together, or workspace for people to come together to be able to work more flexibly. And consequently, there's a change in geography. There's a change in where wealth is. So if we're working more from one particular place, that means that we're going to be in our communities more. So we're in a real advantage in Kent because we're so close to London that we can get into London super fast, and we've got this high-speed train, which is amazing. But we can get in nice and quickly. But it also means that we can spend more time with our families. We can spend more time here investing in our communities. So that means that the wealth is going to change. Not only is it going to change from the point of view of where we are working from, because we're going to be spending more money because we are working from where we're working, but also what I believe will happen in time is that we will see smart businesses. So the geography of business will change to where the workers are. So no longer business will feel that they need to be right in the centre of the city of London, but they will feel that they can be anywhere, or more importantly, they'll want to move to where the smart workers are. So that means the pool of talent or the educational system is going to be super important, because businesses are going to look at where that pool of talent is coming from. So we have in Kent the opportunity to try and attract bigger business, because they're not constrained by geography anymore, and they are going to be pulled by the talent or the place or the environment. So you could find a situation where you've got much larger companies wanting to relocate into Kent as a result of wanting to go where the workers are, which I think is a massive shift. And we need to be ready for that to happen, or at least make the opportunity for that to happen, so that we can see a situation here which is a complete transformation of bringing everybody in, and you're becoming almost like a slave to the system of the commuter territory of on the train into London, and spending so much time on a train, where we can actually move into a more sustainable way of living, which is less dependence on our cars, and actually get ourselves weller and fitter through using bikes and other modes of transport which are far more sustainable within our environment. And it's going to be cheaper as well. It was, if before London had a monopoly on office space, and in Kent office space, I mean, in King's Cross, it was £85 a square foot. And down here, it's 15, 17, 18 pounds a square foot, depending on, and even cheaper. So the difference in cost is exponential, and no longer London will have that monopoly on that, and we're already seeing rent prices dropping like a stone in London as a result of this change. The change is happening so fast, it's untrue. And what we need to do is to think differently about our environment and have real respect for where we live in such a beautiful county, and can we move to a less dependence on fossil fuels, and move to what we would call a circular economy, which is being powered by renewable resources, and being far more responsible for our environment, and reusing and recycling, so that we can work in a far more sustainable way. if suddenly there is this shift of geography of people and wealth, that means that as people are living, we are able to live longer in Kent and enjoy being in Kent. We need to make sure that we have the content, the culture, the arts, and all of the things that enrich our lives that we're not enjoying at the moment, but will enjoy again in the future, and make sure that we can we have the arts, that we have as much culture as maybe you would find in London. So if people are moving out of the city and back to Kent, or moving to Kent for the first time, or those that are spending more time in Kent, that we can enjoy the countryside, the landscape, but culture as well. So we don't feel like we're falling off a cultural cliff, and we can enjoy as much of the arts as you might enjoy in the city. And this change and transformation, although it's been sped up very, very quickly. It can't happen overnight. So in a way, we're just getting a little taste of it now, of seeing what the future could be and how we could live differently and how we could seek out opportunity. But what's actually incredibly important is to look at the alpha generation, the generation coming through, and to see how they are living differently and how they are thinking differently already, and create generational regeneration. Now, what I mean by that is the youngest generation are so important to change. If you ask the younger, if you say to the youngest generation that I'm vegan, they just shrug their shoulders, and they're of course you're vegan. They've gone plant-based, or they're going plant-based, or so many of their generation are going plant-based. But if you say that to an older generation, they look at you as if you're a bit crazy. This younger generation are not so dependent on, or they're not so interested in alcohol, and they're changing the way that they're working, and they're moving so much more into tech, and also at the same time we need to provide them with stuff and content to do, so that they can have a really good memory of how they're being brought up, and how they can move, can stay and invest in the county. What we don't want them to do is move away, and now they can see an opportunity for they can have their career and they can work in Kent without the bright lights of London, because that's the only place that was perceived to be where they could have the opportunity. Now things can change, and we need to harness that generation for change. And this is just one of our projects, which is the skate park, and which will open next year, middle of next year, we hope. It's taking quite a long time to come together, but because it's such a hugely complicated project, but it's so exciting, and it's going to put Folkestone on the map. And it's a place where young people will be their own, and it will be the world's first multi-story skate park. But the point of this is that we want young people to have a really positive memory of growing up in Folkestone, and that there is content and stuff for them to do. So we're encouraging them to stay, and if they stay, they will become the entrepreneurs of the future, and and they will create their businesses within Kent. And that is a far more sustainable community, which we can move forward with in a positive way. And they can work in co-working spaces, which of shared values of different companies, and they can become, we can move away from maybe a society of such big business, because technology is allowing us to do that. So we can see a situation where we are creating environments for the small entrepreneurs and the larger co-working spaces, and also where bigger business can be attracted into Ashford in Newtown Works. Not just Ashford, but the whole of Kent. This is Newtown Works, and we are working towards getting the big Netflix, Amazons of this world to come and film at Newtown Works, but creating new business, new type of work, and maybe 1,500 to 2,000 people could be working here in the future. And that's completely different type of work, type of business to the what Newtown Works was originally, but breathing new life into this place. So we can attract this type of new workforce into these spaces. And I think also, if we move to a more sustainable society, where we can design really responsible architecture, which is completely fossil free, and also energy, what we call energy plus. So not only does the building uses the energy that it creates, but it also gives back to the grid as well. So it becomes what we call an energy plus building. Then we can, and this is a project that we're working on called the Venorium, we can create buildings in the landscape, which are places where people can visit and enjoy, in terms of, this is a Venorium for wine, so they can sample wines, but they can also work in this place, and this is a business in the landscape. So if it's in the right location, if it's designed in the right way and responsibly, we can embrace the landscape and become part of the landscape. And by putting these types of buildings in the landscape, we can also enhance the landscape and these spaces. So it's a real change and a real shift of how we think we can be in the future in terms of where we are. And really importantly, how we're going to live in the future is so important, in terms of if we are moving, we're spending more time in our homes, and because we've got more time, because this shift and change is allowing more time, then how are we going to live? Where are we going to live? The importance of a garden is going to be, the importance of open space, importance of landscape is going to be so important. And the importance of a view, all of these things which are going to be even more heightened. And this is a scheme we're working on in Hythe, in Foxwood. We've oversized every single apartment, but more important than that, we've created shared landscape spaces all the way around, and we're making garden balconies. So there's so much more importance to the balcony. They which can enjoy the view, but they've got space which they can garden as a on a balcony, but equally you can you can lock your apartment up and go away for a few months and not worry about it in the same instance. So it's completely flexible in terms of living. And this is a project at the Leeds Pavilion, which we recently got planning consent for. And again, oversized balconies, oversized apartments. It's all about a view and feeling of that space. And if we can create buildings like this in our town centres as well, which will really enrich and help to enrich the place. And Folkestone is developing and changing, and with the help of Sir Roger de Haan and its creative quarter, and embracing the arts and embracing restaurants and bars, and really transforming this town and making it more vibrant for the people who live in it and the people who move to it as well. A really exciting place to live, but also work from. And if they're working from the place, creating that wealth, then that will be regenerate and be self-fulfilling within the overall town. And as part of this project, we are restoring the Leeds Pavilion. It was a fantastic space, and it's in falling apart at the moment, but this is how we want to restore it. And can we create a flexible place where they have theatre, where they can have community groups coming together, and also create in the day potential space for co-working, for flexible workspace. So you don't have to work from your apartment. You can come down and work in another space, but it's part of an overall complex, which is a far more healthy environment in terms of staying in the one place for your work, your live and sleep. So, but still being 56 minutes away from London on the train, so you can get to London easily, but you're right on the seafront. So a really attractive place to live and a different way of living. And what we need to do is to create social spaces and trendy social spaces where we can enjoy really good food and great beer that Kent is making, and be really proud of the wine that we're creating, the beer that we're creating. And so much of what we're doing is coming from the enriched landscape and the soil that we're growing from. And this is the Elwick Cinema Complex in Ashford. And we've recently finished and opened McNade's. And McNade's is a really interesting example of a farmer's market where they are using and they're selling Kent produce and linking up with Kent producers and bringing that all to one place. And you can come here and eat and then also choose your produce and the food that you might go home and cook that evening. And so if we can create environments where your food and the food that we are making here in Kent and bringing that together in our town centres and enriching our town centres with food halls, then perhaps we can move a little bit further away from this supermarkets kind of dictating what we should eat, which is food coming all from around the world, but moving towards eating and enjoying produce from Kent, which is seasonal, and we can really then move forward in a more sustainable way, which is fueling our own local economy. And this is a photograph from a bathing machine from Margate from the Edwardian era. And we have to remember that in Kent, we are enriched by the sea coming all the way around our coastline. And we have a beautiful coastline, and there is new ways in which we can enjoy our coast, and we do that. But can we create a situation where we are holidaying again in our county and encouraging people to come and enjoy our beaches and our coastal towns? And we are working in Dreamland, and we are extending Dreamland, and we hope in the future that Dreamland will also be open for conference venues and bringing business to Margate, very much like the Brighton model, and Dreamland will be at the centre of that. And Margate's transformation as a coastal town is going through what I'd like to refer to as a coastal renaissance, because now people want a staycation, they want a mini break, they want to come to Margate. And for the first time ever, and I never thought I'd ever be able to say this, we are trying to create a 4 or 5 star hotel in Margate, and Margate is ready. Is Margate ready for that? And we're also looking at transforming Margate's town centre, because the old town is absolutely beautiful, but could we do more of that, create more making spaces, create more entrepreneurial spaces, so that people can work from these spaces, work from home, put art at the centre, put creativity at the centre, and really encourage entrepreneurs of the future. And as big business moves away from Margate, or the big retailers such as M&S and Woolworths have gone, what can occupy those spaces? What is the future of our high streets? How can we change our town centres and make them vibrant again? And I think we can. We've got this opportunity now to reoccupy those spaces as creative spaces, work spaces, shared spaces, but also spaces where we can enjoy the enriched food that we produce. And this is an idea to turn Cecil Square into a public square, which at the moment's a car park, and then put a food hall right in the centre and make food the centre of this place. And can we create really high quality hotels and encourage people, more and more people, to come and enjoy Kent in the same way that we enjoy ourselves? And this year we celebrate 10 years of Wroxall. I can't believe it's been there for 10 years. It's flashed past, and Josh, who owns Wroxall, is adapting and changing to these times and how they're working, and they are using far more local produce and seasonal food, and changing the way that they're operating, and it's going from strength to strength, and supporting the fishing community. So I think the opportunity is there, and there's a massive opportunity for Kent to grasp this change in wealth and how we think and how we're working, and I think we can really enrich our lives and enrich the county, and I think we should keep it Kent. Thank you very much. So I think it's just after 8:30, and we can we can have any questions if there are any.
There's been quite a few in the chat, so I guess we can go through those. Would be a good place to start. Yeah.
Thank you. Do you want? Yeah. Can you read them, Press?
Of course. So I think you sort of answered this, but Graham's asked if you agree that the change in the locus of working base will be a lifeline for challenged high streets.
Say that again.
Do you agree that the change in the locus of working base will be a lifeline for challenged high streets?
Right, it's so hard to hear for some reason.
Sorry.
I can see Graham there.
Graham, do you want to ask? I'll try and sort my sound out.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Graham. How are you doing?
Yeah, Guy, obviously you know my interest in high streets, but do you agree with me? And I think this is probably true. It's probably an axiom that by relocating our work base to home for a lot of us is a lifeline to high streets when the whole lockdown thing begins to ease. And if so, how do we capitalise on that?
Well, I think we'll all go a bit crazy if we work from home all the time, all of us.
Yeah.
And I think human interaction is very important, and I think exchange of ideas and everything else. So, but as we work more from home, we need to find other workplaces maybe near to home as well, where we can share it. And that is the key to our high streets, I think, because if we are reoccupying spaces in a flexible way, then we're going to want to go out for lunch. We're going to go meet people in the evening. We're going to go and buy something in the shops. But I think shops are going to change. It's not going to be big retail anymore. We've got opportunity for young entrepreneurs or for people setting up businesses. And I think we're going to be looking for more about the bespoke. So that gives massive opportunities for our high street. And I don't think I've ever felt so, been very down over the last 10 years about our high streets. But actually, I think we're being thrown a lifeline, and which we can really sort of capitalize on. And I think that's really exciting.
Great stuff. Thank you.
Fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I mean, it goes with what we're doing at the High Street Task Force.
Fair?
Yeah, can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Emma Wilcox has asked, so how we're going to live and where we're going to live is obviously such an important question. And the quality of the built environment and access to local facilities and access to the high quality public places and the rich cultural offer is key. And it's about addressing comprehensive digital infrastructure. So I guess it's a question on digital infrastructure and maybe also on sustainable infrastructure, public transport, and access to all of these spaces as well.
I don't know about anybody else, but I've got a couple of bikes now, and I'm spending far more time worrying about the tires on my bike than the tires on my car, and I think that's a really, really positive place to be. And if I'm doing that, then I can bet millions of other people are doing the same thing. So then we have a responsibility to make sure that we can cycle safely, that we can maneuver through our towns, we can get from one place to the other and encourage people on their bikes. What I think would be really sad if we come out of this pandemic and suddenly we all just go back to how it all was and we don't learn anything from this and we can't move forward. And I think there's a massive opportunity to actually take the good things that have come out of this and how we've changed and maybe move to a healthier lifestyle, but local authorities need to embrace that infrastructure. They need to embrace how we're going to maneuver ourselves around. And if there's more of us in Kent, because we're not all in the city, then local authorities need to invest, because there's more of us around more of the time. But then also equally, it's up to us to invest in our communities as well.
Yeah, no, yeah, sorry, just trying to unmute myself in time. I think that leads on quite nicely to, I've just lost it now. So Toby's asked how we square the requirement for local homes, office and commercial development, but also maintaining this Garden of England status and reputation that we enjoy in Kent. I think you sort of touched on that, but I think it's a good point.
I think the Garden of England status is the absolute key to everything that we have, and we need to embrace the garden. I just touched on this a little bit when I was talking, and I honestly believe that as society moves forward, we will go plant-based far more, and in time, meat will be considered to be a luxury. If that happens in the way that I think it's going to happen, then what will happen is that there'll be less demand on agricultural land, and then we can actually give so much of our landscape back to the landscape. I'm so encouraged by this idea that we can grow more woodland, that we can grow more wild flowered meadows, and that we can actually allow our wildlife to re-inhabit the Garden of England. And actually, if we are really clever about it, as maybe bigger business wants to move away from the city and out into maybe our county, other counties, then they can actually occupy some of the Garden of England, but only if they are giving back to nature, only if they give back in a really positive way and allow. So that could be a business, and you see it with historically Cadbury, the Bourneville Villages, or Dyson, or McLaren. I mean, it's a car manufacturer. They are in the Wiltshire landscape, and so we can do similar things, but they have to have a responsibility to the landscape and help us to bring it back as a landscape, because we must maintain our Garden of England status, because that is so hugely important. Just because we build, if we just have this closed mind that, oh, building in the landscape, that is absolutely, you can't do it, then we just close ourselves off to opportunity. And I think there is real opportunity to actually build sustainably in a circular economy, and actually give back to the landscape and re-fertilize in a different way, and allow nature to breathe.
Okay, brilliant. We've got a question from Tarir. He asks, do you think landlords need to be more flexible with their rental approach to allow new entrepreneurs to take the risk on opening businesses in the high street? And do you think maybe that the local authorities can step in and assist with this?
Yeah, look, 100%. So the model that we've been trying to work on is, say if you have on the ground floor, you could have a shared workspace or retail shop or a making place. So you're actually making the product, or, because there's nothing better than actually seeing the maker. But you almost give that away for £1 just to get rid of the rates, because we all know that councils need rates and stuff like that, and they're very expensive. But then you occupy the ground floor, so it's a vibrant space, and then you have residential above it in the high street, and then the landlord's taking the rent for the residential, which is propping up the rest of it. And that's a model that we've been using in Folkestone. It's a model that we're looking at in Margate at the moment, And I think it's if the council can assist with that in some sort of way, it's a way of getting vibrancy across the high street, and it's a way of landlords actually ensuring that that they're getting the most amount for the rent for the residential. Let's face it, if all the shops are boarded up on the ground floor, who's going to want to live above it? Because it's dead. Nobody wants to live somewhere that's dead. So we need to encourage that vibrancy. So it's kind of like a win-win situation.
Brilliant. I think this might be your last question. I think we need to head over to main stage at 1:45. So Emma Wilcox has asked, will the planning white paper proposals support your ambition for high quality and sustainable development and give planning authorities the tools that they need to support that?
I don't know is the answer. And my experience of planning legislation is it takes forever to change this planning system, and the years and years and years and years I've been doing this, the changes just seem to be quite small. And you know, I take encouragement from, if the scheme is right, if the project is right, and the officers can see the belief. Sometimes I've had situations where officers get on board with it. They know it's contrary to planning policy, and they recommend it for a refusal, but they give me a really, really light touch kind of planning objection, and then we go to committee, and with an enlightened committee, and that's what we elect them for. I've had situations where we've actually had approvals, but it takes belief. The Venorium was one of those. The Venorium was one of those, and the committee saw the bigger picture. They saw the opportunity, and they took that. And but I mean, it would be great if planning could follow that and support change, but it's pretty tough to change that legally.